Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights. This is the second and last part of my pre-tribute to Mark Dehem, who's got liver and pancreatic cancer. Long discussion with his brother about the good old days and about how Mark's doing. But thanks sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, Compsy.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins Scott Auctions, and Topps Panini and Upper Deck. So here's the rest of my conversation with the older brother, Jim. I've known these guys for 50 years, so they're older themselves now. Anyway, be praying for Mark. Tell me more about Mark. Mark, if he gets this chemo, that would be great, but he's still in a big battle.
Yes, he's got a long fight. I'm not sure what could be the answer since he's been so long without any chemo.
Is he happy with his doctors? Doctors are important. Having support from family and friends is important. It seems like he's gotten a great outpouring from the Detroit Tiger family and the collecting family up there in the greater Detroit area.
I'm glad you watched that video. It's pretty cool, though, isn't it? I know it's mostly about Mickey Lolich, but you do get to see
Mark at the end. But the whole show was to help Mark. That's the esteem they have for him. The good guy stories in the hobby, that ought to be more important than a new high price that something sells for.
I tell a lot of people that come into shows that me and Mark have been doing this for over 50 years, and we're not afraid to show our face at any show.
You don't have to hide from anybody. I'm at the point now, I don't want to do business with anybody that I don't like. And I think a lot of people think that way. So when you guys are at the National, there are people that come to your table because they trust you, they know you, and they look forward to seeing what you got. Like you're saying, you've got a little bit different stuff than Mark, and you guys
have fun
in the vintage area.
Yeah, because this will be our 43rd. We only missed the first one in LA.
Yeah.
And then we were the second one in Detroit. However, we had tables with Budnick and Wimmer, so it didn't count.
You and Mark have a collector gene too, or are you more dealers?
No, we did have the collector gene. We were collecting any Topps card we could when we were doing it. If it was Topps, we wanted it. Even non-sport, we wanted it. And that went pretty heavy for a while. Then we decided to sell off the non-sport. And then it went to the hockey and football and basketball we sold off. But then we got to where we sold off even the baseball. So for me, I just collect my Tiger memorabilia now. Like I have some Tiger seats from the stadium, the original ones that were in 1927.
Oh, wow.
And some K-Line memorabilia. And then I do collect Pudge Rodriguez cards with my son because Pudge came to town right when my son was 5.
Yeah.
So we got to have all the Pudge cards.
Does Mark have a GoFundMe where people can contribute to his medical?
On Facebook, you can find the GoFundMe for Mark Dehem.
All these years, I've never been sure of whether your last name is 2 syllables or 1 syllable. And you're confirmed that it's 2 syllables.
Yeah, there's still some people that say Dehem, just the D in the end. I've always said Dehem because originally when our grandfather came over, it was supposed to be a capital H. It was changed when he came through in Canada and changed to a little H. But I still say it where it's Dehem. Mark will say Dehem. See, we still got our differences.
Brothers love each other and they have similar DNA, same parents, but slightly different personalities. And I just know all the times of coming up to y'all's table, you're always there together, working it out, but y'all have slightly different personalities. It probably is a good thing for the customers that come up. Does someone prefer to work with you and someone prefer to work with
me? It happens, but it doesn't bother either one of us. Yeah. So I know sometimes Mark will say, here comes so-and-so, you'd better talk to him. He just knows the guy who prefers to deal with me. So,
are y'all pretty close in age?
Yes, I'm 64. I'll be 65 in May. And Mark is 62, and he'll be 63 in late May.
Too young to be getting cancer, but it's young enough that hopefully he can beat it.
Yes.
The help of some good doctors, and they're improving the chemo and radiation and immunotherapy every year. They're getting better at that. But pancreatic is really difficult.
Very difficult. But we've got a lot of close family and we got a lot of friends that are very close. So
everybody's terminal, but y'all are making the most of that. A show that you had a week and a half ago had to be a real highlight.
It was great. The people were amazing. I couldn't believe how many people I saw come through that I knew from over the years. So it was very fun. You're trying to think of some of the guys from the old days that you might remember. John Ramirez did show up for a few minutes. Kenny Gakowitz, he was there.
Kenny, I thought it was Gahevich.
Yeah, I've heard that one both ways too. I say Gahevich and I say Gakowitz.
Okay, I definitely remember
one.
him. He was a big guy, but a young guy. When I went to Detroit those first times, I could see there's many different ways to hobby. And that was important for me to see that because I don't want to do exactly what everybody else does. I want to experience the hobby and what's meaningful to me. And Detroit had all kinds.
When you were coming up from Bowling Green, what year did you graduate?
No, I was a professor there. I started teaching there in 75, teaching there from 75 to 80. Most of my classes were like Tuesday and Thursday, so I could get away on a Friday, so I could hit all the Midwest shows. But Detroit was low-hanging fruit. They had great cards there, great dealers, great personalities. It was an hour and 15 minutes maybe to drive up. My first price survey was announced in 76, and that ran a few years, and the first book was 79. All the first stuff was done when I was still at Bowling Green. Then I moved to Texas in summer of 80. But I still kept going up there every once in a while, but I wasn't living there. So I was really then only coming up for the big shows.
I do remember it was at a Cincinnati show with you and Denny Eckes when you bought the names for Americana from Charlie for $100.
Like I said, Charlie was pretty easy. I think it was just the name, but it was a good name. And that was Denny.
Very good.
More Denny than me. Denny really saw the vision for that. Denny was such a strong business guy. I was just thinking I can do a price guide. And he said, hey, I can take care of the business aspects. And I learned a lot from him. He let me do the price guide stuff and he took care of all the other stuff, including the branding and then the publishing part and the graphics and stuff like that. He was a great blessing in my life. And I'd met him through the card show circuit. And gosh, Jim, that would have been probably 78.
It was at the Sharonville Hilton.
Yeah, those were great shows. Except, do you remember that show? Somebody would always pull the fire alarm.
Always. Oh,
I don't know if it was Saturday night, but there'd always be somebody pulling the fire alarm. I suspect who it was. Probably statute of limitations now. I don't know that it's a felony, but it was irritating. Except that after a few years, you came to expect it.
The worst part was poor Bill Zimpelman was not on the first floor like he should have been.
But he had trouble getting around, yeah, because he had his arm crutches things, yeah.
Arm crutches, yeah. I think he was up like 8 floors that time, and he came all the way down.
That's bad.
On the stairs. But yeah, it happened every year. Somebody pulled that alarm.
Nowadays, they'd be able to figure it out. There'd be cameras, and somebody would pay for that, because that's cruel to do that to Bill Zimpelman, who was a great guy, but that's not right. Who I think it was, he used to drink too much. Just was a prank, but it was a prank that was irritating because you're going to have to put on some clothes and go outside and wait for the false alarm thing. That's not what I call the good old days.
Not that part.
That part was an unnecessary evil.
I have talked to Zimp lately. He's still around.
Good. And he was even more knowledgeable, I think, in music than he was in sports cards. A very sharp guy. I had some great deals with those guys when he was with Mike Weed and Wayne Varner. They owned Pittsburgh.
And they could come up with beautiful cards.
Anything in the Pittsburgh area went to them. And that's why there were no shows in Pittsburgh for many years. They didn't want to have shows there because they didn't want to mess up their flow of material into their hands.
The price guide, I was wondering how you formulated that. Between your statistic classes, what was it that got you going?
Number one, I thought it was needed. Number two, I thought I could do it. Number three, the stuff I thought, I don't know how to do that. Denny walked up and said, hey, everything you don't want to do or don't think you can do, I will do. I will get it done. And that was just the perfect business partnership at the time. Back in the day, I didn't realize how much work it would be. I didn't realize it'd become a life work for me. Unfortunately, I couldn't really be very much of a collector after that. I couldn't be a dealer for sure. I could barely even be a collector. I picked up some type cards to show in the annual books. But being a professor, I had extra time. I was single when I started, so it was wonderful. I wouldn't change a thing. And I met great people along the line, and I certainly would not have been able to do it if there weren't so many great dealer relationships and collector relationships along the way of people just like with you and Mark. I think that if somebody's trustworthy, they're trustworthy. You guys were trustworthy. And I think I was able to figure out who the trustworthy dealers were. And when you trust somebody, then a lot of times they trust you, and I was trustworthy. Other than that, it would have been a really difficult test. When I first got started, people were saying, I'm not so sure about this. I don't know about that. I said, look, trust me, the hobby needs a comprehensive price guide. We're not going to be able to buy cards anymore. So no, you're going to be able to buy even more cards, but you're not going to be buying for a penny on the dollar, but you'll still be able to get good deals. In fact, you'll have more good deals. You just won't be able to take advantage of people anymore. But because of that, you're going to get a lot more deals. And I think that really came true.
Did part of your studying for this come through Gary Sawatsky?
I did a lot of deals with Gary and Jim and Dwayne and his various associates that he had, but he was very astute. I bought him out several times. He was great at buying cards, but he didn't have a lot of patience for selling cards. He would sell the cream off the top. And then if I'd hit him on a Sunday afternoon, because I learned, don't go to him on Friday afternoon or Saturday, but on Sunday afternoon, when he's getting ready to pack up, say, I'd be interested in taking everything if you're interested. And he'd say, sure, make me an offer. And I'd make him a wholesale offer, wasn't a steal, but if I said what it was now, you're a crook, you stole from him. No, he was a willing seller and I was a willing buyer. I made him an offer, he accepted it. And he wasn't unhappy at all. In fact, he was thinking, gosh, I'm leaving empty-handed with a bunch of $100 bills, but things weren't worth as much then. Then the next show, he'd have a whole bunch more cards. So he never ran out. What I learned from him about price guides is not about the demand as much as the supply, because the stuff he kept coming up with, that was an indicator of how much supply was there. Then what was left was the stuff that didn't have as high demand. And the stuff he didn't sell was still good stuff. But before the internet, before grading, if you're at a local show, you have to have somebody walk by your table and say, I want that card. It was very regionalized in those days.
I just remember him doing his little survey and the 67 Brooks Robinson. That was the one that
was a tough card. That's legit.
Gary came up with that, and it was just incredible. Everybody had to have one then.
And this is 50 years ago. You'd always think a guy with a ponytail is going to be very smart and astute. And he was burly, but he was intellectual.
Very much.
And he just didn't look like it. But I got along great with him because I understood he was a piano mover. And when he'd be moving pianos for people, he'd say, what do you got in the attic? And I said, we got a bunch of old baseball cards. So I'll move them for free. And when you got a guy that's moving a piano, not all by himself, but I'm not sure he couldn't because
he was a big guy.
He's a big dude.
His Nestle deal was probably one of the best deals in the hobby. I was astounded by how he did that.
You got the uncut sheets, right?
Correct.
He professionally cut.
Yeah. The deal for Nestle did not go well. It was on the wrapper. You could buy the uncut sheet by sending in a certain amount. The problem was the first sheet was the sheet that had Mattingly, and that's what everybody was grabbing. They weren't grabbing evenly.
Yeah.
But he made a deal to buy them all.
Yeah.
But then his big problem was getting them cut.
Right.
And nobody understood that they had to be cut perfect.
Exactly.
These guys were messing them up for him all the time. Then he got them cut and he had the sets. And I think it was maybe late 80s. Anyways, he was trying to sell them an SCD. I think he started at $39.95.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And he was getting hardly any orders. He couldn't figure out. And he thought, this is a good product. But he didn't panic. You know what he did?
He raised the price.
He raised the price $10.
Again, he should have raised it to $99.95 and he just sold even more. If the price is going up, they want it.
That's what he did. The next month, he went up again. And then when he hit $89.95, the floodgates opened.
Okay. I'm telling you, he was smart. He was ahead of his time. Was he out of Ypsilanti?
Yeah, that was his original home. And they lived for a long time outside of D.C., too. commune, him and
That
Goofy.
commune, I know.
And that's where they met the guy that they made a movie about him. Robin Williams played the doctor.
Oh, Patch Adams?
Patch Adams. Gary and Jimmy were roommates with him at a town.
Mark needs Patch Adams. Patch
Maybe
Adams, his theory was positive attitude and be happy. If you get gloomy, your body doesn't like that. You're going to have optimism, think the best, a lot of laughter each day. Instead of watching sad movies, watch funny movies. That's the lesson of Patch Adams. There's some truth to that. Now, that and chemo. I'm not saying he shouldn't do the chemo. He should avail himself of all the best of modern science. But, what I saw on the video that you told me about was a very positive thing that ought to be uplifting to Mark's spirits and all who know him. Players who get a bad rap of being uncaring really stepped up for Mark and came through for him.
The past 2 days when I've been there visiting Mark, yesterday, Ron LaFleur called. He hadn't heard from Mark in a few weeks. Wanted to know. Today, I was sitting there. Mike Heath called, wanting to know what's going on with Mark.
Are you keeping a record of this? Because the hobby needs good stories. Now, I hope it ends well, but along the journey, this is a lot of affirmation for a guy that is respected by his peers and people he worked with. I hope people say that about me when I get to a situation where I'm needing some assistance.
I hope we all can say that. You lived a good life and you helped people when you could.
I'd love to have 100 good years, but I'd rather have 50 good years than 70 mediocre years. So make the most of what you have while you can, knowing that what I learned from my parents is that for a lot of people, the last year of their life is a struggle. So we shouldn't not expect that. But then look at all the life that was lived and the enjoyment in all the years except for the last one. But my mom and dad, that last year was really difficult. But they were in their 90s. Am I going to complain? No, I wanted to bring some joy into their life and give them some happiness. And they loved hearing from old friends. And just like Mark is. So Mark, if you're listening to this, there's more than just me praying for you and hoping for your full recovery. Everybody dies. My hope is that you've got a lot more good living in you and that you can enjoy this season of life as much as it's going to be really difficult, because it is clear you've got a lot of great support and you're held in high esteem, like I say, by the baseball players that usually are pretty dispassionate about the hobby. He's allowed them to see a side of the hobby that's trustworthy, that's not just out to make a buck. Then that's a great legacy for you and your brother.
And I'm hoping to have many more years.
Many more, but whatever it is, however many it is, I hope they're good years, that he can know how much he's loved, and that he can express that to the people he loves too. He's getting a chance to do that, and I hope the chemo is not so difficult. My friends that have had some of this, it's just really difficult. I hope he can hang in there and some more mountaintop experiences like he had a week and a half ago. That would be cool. And I don't know that he'd be well enough to come to the National, but he'd have people eager to see him. He just needs to follow doctor's orders. I don't know about chemo other than what people tell me. It's really tough. It's killing stuff in your body.
Yes.
Mostly the bad stuff, but good stuff too. Maybe we'll get some people to kick in on the GoFundMe. We're going down memory lane, and I hope there's many more memories to come. It's aspirational, but it'd be great to see you and Mark at the National this year. But he needs to be well enough to be able to go, and I hope he is. I'm praying that Mark will be there alongside you and enjoying the festivities, and hopefully more people will be aware of his need and his story. So give my best to Mark, and we'll hope and pray for the best. Keep being a great big brother.